tell you a story if you gather round me, a fairy tale, all fantasy. We'll climb the highest mountain, swim the deep blue sea. I'll tell you a story if you gather round me. Leprechauns in a pot of gold, stories you've heard, some never been told. Ghosts and goblins in a haunted barn. Gather round and listen, and I'll spin you a yarn. Yep, it's true. My friends be calling me Ole Man Mac for sure. Now the Mac part, that comes from me man, me pap's last name. And the old man part comes from, well, I guess if you be looking at my website and you see my picture there, you probably say that proof's in the pudding, no doubt. Now, some of my friends, if you be willing to listen to them, that is, they'd be wanting to tell you that I shook the hand of old Daniel Boone when he passed through these here parts back in 1803. Yep, he passed right through old Burnt Knob over there. Burnt Knob, that's what we here in Louisville, Kentucky, be calling Iroquois Park today. Anyway, he passed through Burnt Knob on his way down to the Green River to do some land surveying. For you see, that's how old Daniel made part of his living back then. He was a land surveyor. Well, would you believe that when he passed through Burnt Knob, that he shot and killed himself a bear? Yeah, he did. Now, some folks will tell you that he used my knife to whittle into a tree. D. Boone killed the bear, 1803. And some years later, some fellers come along and they cut that old tree down, and they cut that section of that tree out that old Daniel had whittled on. Then they carried it down on 3rd Street right here in Louisville to a place called the Filson Club. Well, sir, they put that section of Daniel's tree into a glass case and placed it into one of their showrooms for all the world to see. You can go there today and still see it if you mind to. Now, folks, I'm not here to tell you about trees and bushes and rocks and such things, and I don't really want to talk about how old anybody is, especially myself. I'm here today to tell you a story, and by jingles, that's just what I'm aimed to do. Well, you see, one day, long time ago, I was out hunting in the woods, when along about noontime, I sat me down under a big oak tree to set a spell and maybe take a nap. And when I heard someone say, "A howdy, friend," and I looked around. At first, I didn't see anybody around me. And then I heard somebody say again, "I said, howdy, friend." I looked down at my moccasins, and sure enough, there was this little feller looking right at me. He stood all of 12 inches tall, in his moccasins, that is, and he was wearing buckskin breeches and a hunting shirt. He had on a coonskin cap, just like mine, and his musket, would you believe, looked almost identical to mine, although much smaller. Well, I said, "I'm sorry, sir, I didn't see you standing there. But may I ask you a question? Who are you and what are you? I've never seen the likes of you or anyone like you in the woods here before." He said, "Well, I'm Pappy Scrunchkin. I live right here on Sunshine Hill, and I'm a Scrunchkin." Now, folks, we here in Louisville be calling Sunshine Hill Kenwood Hill today. Anyway, I said, "A Scrunchkin? Pray tell, man, what is a Scrunchkin? And are you the only one?" Well, he says, "I'm a direct descendant of the elf family." And he says, "You can see, no doubt, my pointed ears." And, folks, I can see right now we're out of time. Don't have enough to finish that story. But maybe if you come back a little later, I could finish telling you that story about the Scrunchkin family and the new stranger on the hill named Mr. Charmings. And maybe a few other stories like the one about the Bear family, or the great steamboat race on the mighty Ohio River, or how about the time me and my Uncle Horace went prospecting for gold down in Muhlenberg County, or maybe some fairy tales or ghost stories or cowboy yarns. Anyway, I promise if you just gather around and set a spell, we'll swap some whoppers and spin some yarns and stretch a blanket till she's about to rip. You all come back and see me now, you hear? I'll tell you a story if you gather round me, a fairy tale, all fantasy. We'll climb the highest mountain, swim the deep blue sea. I'll tell you a story if you gather round me. Leprechauns in a pot of gold, stories you've heard, some never been told. Ghosts and goblins in a haunted barn. Gather round and listen, and I'll spin you a yarn. Y'all come back and see me soon now. You hear?